Well, hello. So excited to be going live with Ashley Ashcraft. She is the author of a book coming out soon called Mission Ready Marriage, which is specifically written for military wives. I'm going to see if I can get Ashley to join us. I'm so excited that she is able to join me today because I think she has a lot to add to the conversation.
Hey,
Hey, thanks so much for agreeing to do
I'm
this with me.
glad it worked out this time. We're not in the ER this time.
I know, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is Finley doing?
She is doing really well. We were actually just up at Duke this morning. That's the
Okay.
hospital where she gets all her care. And we were seeing a GI, which we've been waiting for months. And um, people with Down syndrome have like up to 10% of them have something called Hirschsprung's disease, which is an issue that can happen in the colon. So we're looking at possible surgery for that, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So yeah, but
I guess
otherwise she's
you've
good.
been doing the ride back and forth to Duke a lot.
Yes, I know. But like I should have it memorized by now, but I still use my GPS.
Well, now that we have those conveniences,
Yes,
we get used to
yes,
it.
I
Well,
know.
Ashley and I met at a writers and speakers conference, and we actually got book deals and an agent deal right about the same time. And we both have books coming out with B&H Publishing Group. Ashley's book is coming out in August, and it is called Mission Ready Marriage. It's a Christian guide to discovering hope and purpose as a military wife. Did I get all that correct?
Right?
Okay,
Yes.
good. So Ashley is an Army spouse for 14 years. She has 4 children. And I guess about 6 months ago, you had a Down syndrome baby, Finley,
Mhm. That's right.
which has become a big part of your story. Um, so I knew that Ashley was writing a book on marriage. So I reached out to Ashley and I said, hey, I'm doing these Instagram lives to share information for military wives. I said, would you come on and talk about deployment in marriage? And so Ashley said that would be great. And so I was super happy to have her. We were actually supposed to do this about a month ago,
Yeah.
but doctor's visits got in the way.
Yes.
But it ends up working out just perfectly. I love the
Good.
way God does it. I also think this goes well with the challenge that I'm having people work on this week as
I
well. I'm
saw
really,
that.
yeah, I'm challenging people to spend 15 days just kind of investing in their marriage and see what God would do based on big impacts I've seen in my own marriage when I finally figure out how to show my husband respect.
Yeah.
So I just put that together. So this goes along well with this. So I asked Ashley if she'd talk a little bit about how do we create intimacy with our spouse before, during, and after deployment, which I think it's important to try to keep that intimacy going so that we, don't just create a separation. So Ashley, I know one of the things we wanted to talk about is if you could talk a little bit about special events that you might plan before or even after deployment, and that can be something special that you do with your husband or with your family or all of the above.
Yeah. I think one, like we can see intimacy as like just physical, but important to kind of think about it as all the different aspects. So you'll have like, our physical intimacy, our spiritual intimacy, our emotional intimacy, our mental intimacy, all those different aspects that we have to look at as we look at the deployment before, during, and after. And so kind of thinking of all of those things together, I think beforehand, definitely if you can arrange it, having there's so much stress that goes around it if you know that if it's coming. Like right now, we're stationed at Fort Liberty, so a lot of the people around here don't know their deployments are coming. They get a call and they're gone 24 hours later. So in the case that you can plan a deployment, or that it's coming up, I think it's important to try and plan that couple's time together because there's a lot of logistics that are happening. But if you can plan even like a weekend getaway, something like that is really helpful. And then considering like the whole family picture in mind, we've done before when Tim, my husband, he loves Christmas, and so we knew he was going to be gone his first deployment over Christmas. And so we did a surprise like Christmas in July party, and that was fun where we could just invite everybody in to celebrate an event that we knew he was going to miss.
Right.
But I think, yeah, planning that time together, and it gets trickier with kids and everything, but really investing in that time ahead of time
Mhm.
is helpful. And then on the back end, planning again another trip that you guys can be together or a weekend away, a week away if the Army will give it to you, but just really time to
Yeah.
reconnect because I think it can be romanticized how easy it is to connect after a deployment, but if you've been through it, you know that that's not always the case. And there's that period where often they're really tired, the exhaustion sets in, and then it can feel a little awkward as a couple as you're reestablishing your connection together. And
Right.
so maybe plan it for a little bit out, not immediately after, so you have time to work through some of those things that might set in.
Yeah, no, you really mentioned some really great stuff. Yeah, because they often are jet lagged. Remember, they're usually coming from overseas. And I think the tempo is such that they actually have been working usually about 6 days a week. So they're just tired from that in general. So I think it's really good to keep that in mind. And one of the things that I realized is that it really is kind of awkward
Yeah.
reestablishing your connection. I mean, you've missed each other terribly and you're so excited, but you almost kind of put a little bit too much hype and pressure on it,
Yes.
not realizing that you haven't been around each other,
Yeah.
and it can be a little bit awkward. So yeah, we tried to plan some getaways after got home from deployment. In fact, I even have a friend that did, and I don't know if I'd recommend this. This is the extreme, but she would, when her husband would come back from deployment, she would get his very first 24 hours. Like he wouldn't even see the kids. And then he would bring each kid for 24 hours so that
Oh,
everybody
wow.
got undivided dad time, which I did think was a neat idea. I think it would be hard to say like, you can't see daddy.
Yeah.
But we definitely needed the time away from the house, especially like for me, because I'm at home, still going through the routine, doing all the things.
Yes.
And then he comes home and like wants my attention, and I want to give him my attention, but also there's like all the things, right? The things that need to be done around the house. So it can be good just to kind of get away, even if it's just with your family, so you can focus on one another and not be distracted.
Absolutely.
And I love your idea of the Christmas, because then when it came around, it wasn't like he missed it. Like your family kind of already did it. And if you're a big Christmas person, I could imagine that could be hard. Um, to rearrange Christmas. But we're just trying to make it not be as difficult on them, and honestly on us too, right?
Right.
I actually feel like some of the more lonely times I had was when we didn't have children yet, because everybody else was doing their holiday thing with their family, and like here I was by myself, you
Yes.
know. So to even have done it with him before we went, I think is a really great idea. And then it sounded like you guys involved more than just your family in that celebration.
Yeah, we invited all our friends and family, and we got out the Christmas tree and made Christmas
Oh,
cookies. And
that's
then we were
awesome.
like, it was like 110-degree Tucson, Arizona heat, and yeah, we had the ornaments out, and my father-in-law was playing Christmas carols on the piano, and everybody bought presents to exchange. So we just went all out. And I think one thing I've learned through marriage is, you can get into these routines where it's like, dinner and a movie or just things that are not original, but when you bring in an original idea or something out of the ordinary, it creates more of a bonding experience. And there's science between how it happens in the brain. So events like that are out of the ordinary, that are unique and special, it creates a bonding in the brain that is really important to have, especially before you're about to be apart for, 6, 12 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that bonding. And I bet no one in your family is ever going to
Yeah.
forget that Christmas.
Yeah, it
And
was
there will
fun.
be other Christmases that will be forgotten.
Right, right.
Yeah. And you're going to be able to pinpoint exactly what year that was because you'll probably remember.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Well, the other thing I wanted to get you to talk about is a hard thing to talk about, but you offered, and I was really happy that you offered to talk about it. And just talking about intimacy with a couple, one
Mhm.
of the things that I think that can really destroy intimacy that people don't realize is when the husband or the wife or both, decide to use porn during deployment to kind of fulfill their physical desires.
Yeah.
And I just wanted for you to talk about, what does that do to our intimacy? And I posted something on this on Instagram back when we were originally supposed to meet, and I got a lot of comments.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's really critical that we address the fact that it really does hurt our intimacy. So would you be willing to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So while I was researching for my book, I came across an article specifically about porn in the military and how it's, it affects both men and women across the world in dramatic numbers. Um, there, anywhere you look at, it's upwards of 80% of people, may be viewing porn. But I think in the military, it's even higher. This report revealed, and because of the stressors, and then also just like kind of it's the norm. So my husband was explaining, like 99% of people over here are doing that, and it's what you do, and so it's kind of become part of the military culture. Like you deploy, and that's something that happens, and that's how you fulfill your needs. But I think that instead of doing that, you could really use it, and I would hope ahead of time too, but even while you're over there, use it as a time to educate yourself on God's design for intimacy. That is the opposite of his design for intimacy, to be looking at somebody else when you've been made, when you've made a covenant before him to share intimacy with that one person that you are married to. And so it's really a breakdown in your marriage, and it's just the enemy's way of getting into your marriage, and it causes so much harm, whether your spouse knows that it's happening or not. And again, that can be the spouse using it on the home front, or it can be the service member using it, downrange. And so I would suggest things, like you guys could read a book on sex together while he's deployed. And let's look at what does God actually say about sex, and how can we create deeper intimacy and have better sexual experience when we are together, and use it as something to get excited for in the
Mhm.
future.
Yeah, that's a great idea, right? Use that time valuable. And my husband and I do pre-marriage counseling with couples that are
Mhm.
engaged. And one of the things we always give them is the book Intended for Pleasure, which is
Mhm.
it's basically a how-to book for
Yeah.
Christians. And we really like to give it to them because, sex was a really good idea and it was God's idea.
Yes.
But it was for marriage, and it is intended to be enjoyed, but in that relationship. And remember, that intimacy is a picture of the intimacy of Christ in the church, right? And so when we bring something else into what should just be something in our marriage relationship, we are not only causing problems in our marriage, but we're causing problems in even our views of God.
Yeah.
So I think that is a great idea to read a book, right? Together. You can even talk about it together,
Yes.
and that's a way to grow in your physical relationship, even though you are apart. And I bet it would make coming back together seem even more exciting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I would hope so. And that's, I think, like my husband and I ourselves, like we've had to do a lot of re-education, because we were kind of trained up by the world. What does the world say about sex? And so
mhm,
we've had to really educate ourselves on what does God say about sex. And so I think, yeah, you can use it as an opportunity to, or even there's lots of video courses online, and you could both, watch it. And then when you FaceTime or however you communicate, email, talk about what you learned. And it's, a lot of couples, as I'm coming to understand, don't understand how their partner's bodies work and how their partner's bodies respond. And so that's a time to really like open up dialogue and like, okay, well, what turns you on? What turns you on? Like we need to be having these, it can feel awkward, but these conversations to help us understand each other's bodies and then therefore be more reciprocal to each other. Which when you're using porn, like, you don't need to communicate with your partner. And then so that breakdown happens there when you do come together, if you've been doing it yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it creates a really false view about what intimacy should be because porn is all about self-gratification.
Yes.
And that's not what God's desire, for sex was. It's not, yes, it does feel good, but it's not just about us. And like, I just want to say, just be very honest, in our culture, this is not just a problem for the men now.
Absolutely.
Statistically, it's a really big problem for women now as well. But I would say probably because we're both women, we have more women listening to this today. And so if you're out there and you're a woman and you're like, okay, Beth and Ashley, I agree with you, but what am I going to do about my husband? I'd encourage you to this will be saved to my Instagram and to Ashley's as well. You can go back and view it. Ask him to take a look at it. This is only going to be 15 minutes long, and then prayerfully consider it. But another problem that we've run into, I still work in ministry with the military, and we're running into couples having a deployment spouse, which is someone that they and their spouse have agreed that it's okay to be intimate with on both sides of the ocean while they are apart. And I think that is extremely dangerous.
Yes.
And so I just want to put that out there too. I mean, believe it or not, this is fairly prevalent right now in our younger airmen and soldiers and sailors. So just want to say that as well. But I think when we bring porn into it, it's bringing something else in the marriage that, shouldn't be there.
Right.
And one, marriage is hard. Military marriage is a little bit harder, but this is a way that I think the enemy can get a foothold if we say, well, everybody else is doing it, so I can do it.
Absolutely.
But what you're doing there is you're harming yourself.
Yes.
And you're harming your relationship.
Right.
So,
And
okay. Well, Ashley, do you have any just main closing thoughts? I do try to keep these short because I know people don't have a lot of time. But I do want to say, Ashley, if you want to send me any books that you want to recommend,
okay.
I can put those out. And obviously, I'll tag you. So anything that I post, you can also post.
Okay.
And I would say, guys, I would highly encourage you to be looking for Ashley's book. I'm sure it's on pre-order, correct?
It is, yes.
Yeah, so you can go to Amazon, Lifeway, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. Again, it's the Mission Ready Marriage. And I would imagine that Ashley talked about this in her book.
Yes.
So this is just a little taste of what will be more of in the book.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a whole chapter on intimacy and again, like you said, making sure you have those conversations with your spouse before they go and really getting on the same page that's healthy.
Yeah, so even maybe they could get your book and read it while they're deployed.
I would love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Ashley. I really
Thank you, Beth.
appreciate you being here today and appreciate what you're doing and appreciate you and your family and the sacrifices you make.
Thank you. All the
Okay.
same to you.
Thanks so much for all of you that joined us. Have a blessed day.
You too.